my favorite person on the planet. Well, second favorite. Well, no, he's my favorite person on the planet. Mr. Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. My second one in the administration is Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, right? So Mr. Powell, they do this monthly Fed announcements. What are they going to do with rates? What's the expectation? They come up with it, and then he does a news conference. In fact, he was in Europe with the ECB, his counterpart, Christine Lagarde. She is the ECB, European Economic, ECB is European Central Bank, is the equal of the Federal Reserve in the US. So Christine Lagarde is the chairwoman of the ECB. So they had a meeting of the heads, okay? And so out of that came this, which I said, I don't know, for 2 months. I think I had the channel for 2 months. This is what he said. And the one on the right-hand side, people, is the decision of all the Fed governors, because on Wednesday they decided not to touch interest rates, okay? They decided not to lower, although they had said we may lower interest rates because unemployment's going up, credit card defaults are going up, economy may be kind of slowing down faster. We may not be able to soft land this thing. Mr. Powell, soft landing doesn't work. It's just a word. It's in your fantasy. It's just not going to work. You guys have always, the Federal Reserve. I like Mr. Powell. It has nothing to do with Mr. Powell. All Federal Reserve chairmen are just the face of them. There's like 10 different governors that all get together in major areas, Atlanta, St. Louis, or wherever, and then they decide once a month what they should do with interest rates, what they should do with money supply, what they're seeing. They gather the economic data from Fred, and then they look at it and they make an announcement. Lower rates, higher rates, whatever. Okay. So after the last one just came out this Wednesday, before 4th of July, this is his summary from the last one. Inflation has eased substantially, but remains too high. I don't know how many of you are here, but no big deal. Do you guys agree inflation has eased substantially in your lives? Not in my life. Feds, not last 6 months, 8 months, as Feds keep saying inflation is going the right direction. I'm like, okay, I don't think so. Maybe these people don't go shopping. I don't know. Maybe they don't go to Costco, or they don't go buy meat, and they don't go buy food, and they don't go buy gas, and they don't pay insurance, and I don't know. I disagree. Feds reasserts long-term inflation target of 2%. I'm betting that long-term inflation target of 2% will only be reached if we get into a recession, because people will stop spending money, and that's when you're going to get that 2% target. Otherwise, sayonara to 2% days. That's when they had zero interest rate policy for 10 years. Too long, too low, too long on interest rates, and they created this monster called inflation. Inflation hurts who? Doesn't it hurt the rich? No. I'm not a socialist, by the way. I'm on Wall Street. I'm a capitalist, but this is all man-made. And then the second whammy came by raising interest rates to kill inflation, because that's the antidote for that. It hurts. I mean, it's just a tax. It's an additional tax on the consumer, on the average American. Strong pace of immigration has boosted labor market participation. Now, this part I agree. We know what's happening with our borders, right? Come on in, and these people are staying at 5-star New York hotels, given $6,000 a month stipend, and doing this. I'm not against immigration. I am an immigrant, but I didn't come this way. Okay, so that part, I'm kind of, without going too political, you guys understand what I'm trying to say. The Fed says the unemployment rate remains low. Yeah, it's creeping up. It's about 4.1%. Economic outlook is still uncertain. So they're just talking both sides of their mouth. And Fed needs greater confidence that inflation is headed to 2%. No, that's not going to happen. The fight against inflation will likely last for years. So how can you say Fed reasserts long-term inflation target of 2%? Fed needs greater confidence that inflation is headed to 2%, but the fight against inflation will likely last for years. I just said that. I never think inflation is going to go to 2% unless the economy tanks. And during the meeting with Christine Lagarde, with the ECB, he said that he does not have a definitive answer as why people are not happy with the economy. I don't know how many of you are here. I don't know. I don't believe the YouTube numbers or StreamYard numbers. or whoever's going to watch this later, are you guys agreeing with this comment? A definitive answer. He doesn't have a definitive answer as to why people are not happy with the economy. I mean, everything is wonderful. The top 1% keeps gathering assets, all the real estate. Rents have gone up through the roof. Affordability is zero, like I talked about, home ownership. Why are you guys unhappy? Aren't you guys making like double, triple of what you guys were making before? These people are so out of touch. And Fed is always behind the curve, and I think they're behind the curve again. He said that all the data that they get is strong. We have an economy growing at a solid pace. Okay, let's see what happens to that. Why is there such a big disconnect between data and reality? Because, Mr. Powell, we cannot eat data. We cannot put data in our tank, okay? And we cannot send our kids to schools with data. We cannot fix our stuff, our cars or our homes with data. We're dealing with reality. We cannot, all these things that you guys come up with, data, inflation is good, all this stuff, hocus pocus. I'm not buying it. But again, Fed is supposed to be non-biased, and they're appointed by the president. Now, if Trump wins, well, I hope you guys watched that debate, whatever that was. I mean, looks like Trump won the debate. I don't know. I think they were just both senile people. But, his job may be not secure, right? I mean, Trump can say, go F yourself, Jay. And then, so this is July 2nd. So the first one I read was the June 12th. The second one is now I'm reading now is from the July 7th meeting. Okay. The Fed meeting. So you guys want to see the difference here, right? So there's like 5 or 6 talking points that they put out, the Fed put out from 6/12 to July 12th. 2. The trend of disinflation appears to be resuming. Now, that's as bad as inflation, by the way. Okay. So when they're saying that, they're kind of hinting, okay, we need to start cutting rates. Because if the consumer goes into the tank because of what I just talked about, right? Savings rate, they don't spend money. What are we going to do? Our GDP is 80%. Maybe you got to start manufacturing stuff again. How about that? But of course not. Why would we do that? The trend of disinflation, which is the opposite of inflation, appears to be bad. Inflation is bad. Disinflation is bad. They're both bad, people. When disinflation happens, all asset prices crash, including the stock market, by the way. Need to be more confident before reducing rates. This is where they're going to run behind the curve, fall behind the curve. I think they should start lowering rates, but they're not seeing it because they're stuck in their head that they have to lower inflation to 2% before they do anything else. Fed doesn't see 2% inflation this year or next year. Didn't they just say on June, right, that they have to reassert 2%? Fed needs greater confidence that inflation is headed to 2%. So that was their target, right? But now they're going like, I think we're going to give up on that. I just said that. The inflation, even with our hocus pocus numbers, never is going to get to 2% a year. Or next year, see what I'm saying? They're just kind of hedging already. This is one area that I agree with the Federal Reserve governors. And I've been talking about it until I'm blue in the face, and I'm going to do. Even if I lose subs, I'm going to talk about this. Budget deficit is very large and unsustainable. Now, this I'm behind. Budget deficit adds to the national debt. I said this a billion times, almost a billion times more before I'm done with this channel. Is every 100 days, budget deficit, not budget deficit, the national debt is going up $1 trillion. Okay? This is from the CBO, not my numbers. Go check it out. It's public info. Number 2, we're at $35 trillion of debt. The servicing of that debt, because they raised the rates, is up to $1 trillion a year now. Just the IOU interest we're paying to all the people who are buying these bonds and IOUs. Because we have the budget deficit, the Fed follows fiscal policy from Washington, idiots, and then the Fed follows with monetary policy. Okay, so if the tax receipts are $1, And if we're spending $2, well, we have a budget deficit of $1. That $1 has to get financed somehow, otherwise government will not be able to function. Well, how's that $1 getting financed? By issuing bonds, by printing more money. And here we go again, right? So this is what we do. We don't live beyond, within our means, just like I talked to in a couple of segments ago. If I'm living beyond, if I'm not stretched out, if I'm living under a comforter that fits my feet, that I'm like, my feet are not always outside, why can't the government do that? If I'm doing it, why can't you guys do that in Washington and the Federal Reserve? But Federal Reserve's hands are tied. The idiots in Washington create the fiscal policy. They have not seen a dollar they don't like to spend. They just like spending. We don't have it, people. Stop spending stuff we don't have. Stop mortgaging my kids' future. Stop. Just stop. It's enough. 35 trillion is enough. Well, that's never going to get paid anyway. But what's happening now is that our debt servicing on that 35 trillion is a trillion a year. Can we not take that trillion and do some good? Of course we can. But no, we'd rather pay interest, right? 4% unemployment that exists. It was 3.5. It's gone to 4, but now they're like hedging day. 4% unemployment is still very low. It's on its way up. Moving too fast creates risk of inflation returning. Inflation is never going to go away. Fed, it's never going to go away because you printed so much. The definition of inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. It's never going to go away. Okay, 2 is good, but then now you created the animal. Now you're trying to put the genie back in the box by raising interest rates. Not going to happen. And the last one, the Fed needs more data. Of course, you guys need more data. And then I'll go back, finish with this, with his comment, with his question. Fed Chair Powell said he does not have a definitive answer as why American people, are not happy with the economy. Mr. Powell, with all due respect, you need to start spending some of your own money and buy some stuff and figure out the differences of what it was and before. In fact, there was an interview I watched with Janet Yellen, and it was a straight up question. Some reporter asked her, do you go shopping, Ms. Yellen? And she goes, yeah, I do my own grocery shopping. Bullshit, I say to that. Imagine the Treasury Secretary doing her own grocery shopping at Albertsons. No. But let's say she does. She goes, I think the prices are about the same as they were 3 years ago. I was like, did you just say that with a straight face, Ms. Yellen? Really? Because if you were going to the supermarket to buy some stuff to eat, I don't think you would be able to say that with a straight face. So that's my rant on Fed and all this other garbage that they're doing.